I've always been interested in like forest floor scenes. So there's like a subgenre of Dutch still life paintings called sottobosco, and it means forest floor, and it's kind of like ground level like observations of these forest floor scenes. So it's always been about kind of trying to capture this really beautiful like magical fairy tale, but also like dark and kind of in some parts grotesque scenes. And so when I learned this technique, I was like, it matches what I was trying to create so well, because it's like black and shiny. So it's called Japanning. So it was like a European version of Asian lacquer work. And so traditionally it was very like simplistic. A lot of the things are like a flower would be made up of like 4 petals and just kind of like little dots, and it was very like beautiful and simplistic. But I feel like mine are kind of how I was kind of doing it in oil paintings, but just using this kind of finish. And the technique is called Japanning, but I'm not doing Japanning because this is my kind of imagery. I start it by so I paint them with gesso and sand down, so you kind of get a really smooth board. And then once that's all prepared, I make a mixture of black lacquer, so using like shellac and like black pigment, and sometimes I put like bits of red, like depending on how warm you want it to be. I layer up about 25 to 30 layers of the lacquer and polish and sand in between, so you get kind of like a mirrored surface. So I built my little varnishing tent just because the shellac, like, it's quite strong and like fumey, and I've got like a carbon filter on it, and it kind of like filters all the air out and makes sure it doesn't kind of like fume out my studio like side. Also, it keeps out any pigment and dust and hair and like just fluff like floating around the studio, because there's like nothing worse when you're putting the final varnish on something, like if you've been working on months and just like a hair will float out nowhere, just like land right in the middle of the shellac, and it'll be like a huge hair just ruining the piece. So yeah, the tent stops that from happening. Yeah. Then I kind of paint silhouettes with, it's like Le Franc Charbonnel gold size, the 3-hour one. It's like my favorite of all of the gold sizes. Like I've kind of tested it a lot, and it's like definitely my favorite quality. You put on the like smallest amount you can because you want it as flat as possible because it cures. Then about 3 hours in, you'll kind of touch it, and if your finger sticks, it's probably not dry enough, like not cured enough to stick your gold on. So like it kind of drags slightly but doesn't stick. Then it's usually ready to put the gold on, and then it just means you get like this really shiny, smooth surface. Whereas if you put too much gold size on it, you can see the brush lines. So like the gold flies everywhere, but you need some kind of like grease or oil or just like any kind of moisture it sticks to, because the gold size that you put on the board is quite tacky. So to pick it up, I usually like rub it on like my forehead or nose, or just like somewhere greasy. Like it's not magnetic, but you can just see it like latch. If you kind of even just hover the brush, it'll kind of like float up and like suction to it. I do blow the leaf when it's on the board, and it just like flattens it out, so you've got like the exact square to cut like really neatly. But yeah, and when I blow it on the board as well, it kind of just goes straight off the board rather than kind of like sticking to other areas that might be wet, and then it means I can kind of collect all of the scrap. But usually if there's like something in my mind that I know I want to put in a work somewhere, but I don't know where it fits yet, or like a gesture that I see when I'm like out on a walk or something, or like just any ideas that I'm not ready to use yet, so I don't forget them, I kind of just like put them down and like stick them there until they fit in the right piece. And then I use the golden fluid acrylic paints to build up shade and then line on top of the golden and silver silhouettes. And the golden fluid acrylic is my favorite acrylic to paint with. Once I've got kind of like a basic kind of structure down, I'll use the Cornelissen Pearl Luster pigments. I'll build up lots of kind of backgrounds with them, and then sometimes I'll like grind down the gold leaf and sprinkle it on the surfaces to kind of build a scene that kind of goes back into the darkness. But that's why I really love sottobosco works, because you just have like just layers and layers of depth. You feel like you're like falling into the forest, whereas you can, with this and the powders, you can really push into the black.